Hi, I'm Micah.
Hey, I'm Christa.
Welcome to Bad People. This is a podcast that seeks to create a safe place to wrestle with life's deeply personal questions. Our aim is to be honest with ourselves first and foremost, to confess where necessary and throw stones at our own glass houses, examining experiences with curiosity and vulnerability. These conversations are not an attempt to provide answers or offer simple platitudes. Rather, our goal is to hold open-ended dialogue around what simply is and do so from a level playing field without fear of judgment or shame. Join Christa and I at your own risk as we excavate the ways belief, community, trauma, and relationship has impacted who we both are today.
Thanks, Micah. Today we're talking about autonomy.
Autonomy.
Yeah, so
big word.
I know, right? We kind of had to check the definition.
Yeah, we both definitely Googled it just to get our facts straight.
Yeah, I think that's been such an important word for me recently. But it means like self-governance, like the concept that you have the right to kind of what you think, what you do, just because you're your own person.
Yeah.
And I think, just to start off, one of the reasons that really matters to me is because I feel like I have always existed for other people. That was, I don't know if this is like a common like adopted thing. If you're adopted out there, I don't know if you always feel like we've talked a bit about gratitude and like owing other people, but that's been a pretty big theme that, like owing God and owing my existence. And, I always have to act out of this place of like considering other people before.
Or just like obeying or and submitting to authority.
Totally. And how that's kind of been either I've like, there's been some form of manipulation and control in that. And so, now kind of being, all of 38 years old and going, no more. Like, nope, I'm allowed to just exist and just be. And also trying to wrestle with like, what do I think about like the gospel in that? Because I would say what the gospel is for me is just like the idea that I can just exist, that God loves me, or is like okay with me or whatever that is, as I am, and that I don't have to do anything, that I don't need to think a certain way, that I don't need to fear like being blessed or not blessed, but that I can just be. So that's kind of what autonomy means to me a little bit currently. You?
Yeah, I think autonomy for me too is very much intertwined with like freedom and fear. So like I feel like very much the same with me. When I was a kid, I had like the authority in my life was my parents, obviously. So I was raised to like obey them, at whatever cost. Like they are the authority and the ones that have kind of control over me as such, or they're in charge. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized, I don't know, that there was a lot of like fear behind that authority. Because like you were saying, there was also some, at times, like we all do it, I think, but there was some manipulation and control in there. And fear is like a really powerful tool to use to maintain that control.
Totally.
So I feel like as I got older and really looked into like what was making me afraid, or what fears were behind a lot of my like actions and decisions, then letting go of those fears almost has helped me become more free and like more exercising my autonomy.
Totally.
But it's interesting with the Bible and how that all impacts this too, because there's a lot in there about obedience and like just following commands with no question, or I don't know, would you say that's impacted you as well?
Yeah, it's funny because for sure. You see that tension between, it's sort of like this underlying theme of that humans bad. God good.
Yes.
Like I can kind of get behind that a little bit. But what I see I want to say, because we kind of like to take the Bible in like these little sections, right? Like, there's the 10 Commandments. So there's like, control or
a
kind
concrete
of
list we can just tick off.
Then plus all like the other laws that go into play. And then, you have the New Testament with all these like instructions.
Yeah.
And
lots of guidance, lots of like,
kind of like,
instructions for how to live.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what I see like overarching from like who God seems to be is, again, he gave us free will. Like, I think we kind of glaze over that. He created us in his image with like incredible capability, and yet said, you can or cannot choose me. Like you can do good or you can do evil in this world. Yeah. And it's interesting because like, okay, like what does that mean for us? It's like, like we are like these little gods walking around, and we can get quite puffed up, like we know best and all of that. And so I understand why there would be like instruction around that, and why, left to our own, we can kind of, like I've seen that in myself, like left to my own, I can kind of make a huge mess. And I do see like, even as I'm pursuing like goodness or like a new way forward, there's still some really nasty thoughts that come up, and then I'm like, that's weird. So again, but I think there's that, like, we can have self-control. So God has like put that stuff within us and kind of gone like, okay, you guys can be self-governing and you can make these choices. And then somehow we have now put, laws, that's how like the world operates. Like things that kind of like help us,
the justice system.
Totally. To maintain good in a society. And, when you think of anarchy, like, I love like a good zombie movie or like apocalypse stuff where you're like, oh man, like people left to their own, it goes real nasty. But again, like if God didn't control us, and if he has allowed us sort of like the freedom to figure it out, like why do we seek then to do that to other people, and then to sort of manipulate them and into thinking that they're either good or bad? So there's some things to kind of like dissect in that. If God didn't do that to us, why are we doing that to other people? Or why do we also take that burden on ourselves? I don't know.
It's funny you mentioned the whole like we're bad and God's good, and like, because I think about now, I think a lot about like God trusting me, which is such a weird concept. Back like in another stage of my life, that would have been like, that would have just been really hard to understand. Like, no, I trust God, and then but like, when we were chatting before about like as parents, we want to bring, at least attempt to parent our kids in a way where they will eventually like stand on their own 2 feet and won't need to call us every 5 seconds to like say, what do you reckon, Mom? Or like, should I do this? Should I take this job? Should I take that job? Be like, I want to be able to say as a parent, like, well, yourself.
That's such a huge thing. What favorite thing to say to the kids?
What's your gut telling you? Like, what do you love? Like, look at all the things that you already know.
Totally.
Like, do you like this job, for one?
And again, like that only comes, I think, through us like sharing experiences with them. Like, I think that's why we're afforded like this opportunity to go ahead of them and to go, here's my mistakes and here are the like triumphs of my life. And this is what I learned. And instead of like, oh man, I've had a few conversations with people just because of like what I've shared in life where they have felt open to share things in their life. And I'm like, it's okay to share like your failures with your kids. Then like it's
just to be a bit more transparent, and like about your humanity.
Totally. And when I'm sure like a mistake will teach you far more than just being told that the singer's right or wrong, because you actually feel the consequence of said mistake. That sucks at the same time because we were talking about physics earlier to like, but every action has a reaction.
Totally. And that's just a natural reality. Like,
and even the best intentions can still have negative like outcomes. I think that's been scary for both of us to go like, oh no, we thought we were doing the right thing and we thought we were discipling people in like the way that leads to like fulfillment or wholeness or, that was pure or good or whatever. And then you go, oh shoot, maybe not. Right.
And I think even that was interesting because in that framework, I always felt like I needed to have answers for people. And that comes out often as like, this kind of pastoral tone of like trying to guide people myself too.
Yeah.
But like, that's something I've learned with my kids is like, yeah, it's okay for them to know that I don't have every answer, that I'm not like,
because they can get answers from like other people.
Totally. It's like a community effort.
But I mean, that means that you're on level playing field with like other like aunts and uncles or grandparents, and you have less control of your life. So if you're willing to like put that down, sort of say, like you said, I trust you to seek out the wisdom that you need.
Yeah.
Which is way more empowering.
Yeah.
We get so scared.
Totally.
That people almost like don't have the right to come to their own conclusions about things.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I was raised with that very, like, parents have total authority.
Yeah.
And that, I think that put pressure, like, it goes both ways, because then my parents probably felt pressured as, like, you feel like, we've got to, like, we've talked about this before, like, lead my children in the way they should go. And then when they're older, they won't depart from it. But with that came this huge pressure to, like, know everything or be 100% confident in everything you were saying, where
could it mean something different, right?
Yeah.
Like, could it just like
no space? Yeah. Like, so you kind of just parrot the teaching you received, and then, but I think with that, like, if that's how you're going to approach it, like the total authority, I think there's just so much more space in there for abuse to take place, because kids are taught not to question, number one, the authority, and then
it's for their own good. Whatever's happening, or they deserved it. Or whatever else.
So as soon as another adult comes along with like an agenda, and they've just been conditioned to trust adults because adults are the authority, then that's where I think that whole idea of I was raised to always, show honor to elders, and I think there's a lot of beauty in that, but there's also the dark side of it, where if you're just taught to unconditionally trust someone because they're older in years, then you can be so taken advantage of.
Again, like, words have meaning, but like deep meaning. Honor. Like, I had somebody, because I've quoted a few times, the heart above all is
deceitful.
Right? And how that's most likely actually not how that's interpreted. The heart is deep. The heart is, it was my lovely therapist actually that
interesting,
like helping me to see that differently. She's like, we have these Bible translations, which I loved that. Like, Tynehead was the one of the, I mean, that's a publishing house, but that came from this idea of wanting to make sure like the farm boy who was like illiterate had access to scripture.
The everyday, everyday person.
Again, like, that comes back to like this empowering, like, so that no one priest or pastor,
for sure,
like the authority, right? And can abuse that. But then with that has come also
translation.
That also have a bend, right?
Totally. And an agenda. Well, not an agenda, but they were
sometimes.
And they were translated through a certain worldview.
Right. Like the Western
of the time.
Totally, right? And and then how that's then parsed down to us, and like how we're pastored or discipled, then we get that kind of same view. So, again, like, great. You just see the tension the whole time.
And I feel like that deceitful thing, because that is an interesting verse, but like, they were maybe just trying to scratch at the, like, the human condition of like,
totally,
we often don't know what we want.
And
then we're always figuring that out. I feel like there's just this sort of uncertainty to human nature that's like, I don't know. I wanted this yesterday. Today I don't want it.
Totally.
And I mean, that's exemplified 1,000 times in toddlers, where it's just like, like, I want
but like
the green plate, but then they get it and it's like, I wanted it. I don't know. We're just like, I think that's a human thing. And
and then what are we supposed to say to the kids? Like, oh, you're bad for acting like that. No, it's no different than us to sort of label and shame ourselves and go like, oh, look at you and your heart and all the terrible thoughts you think. Like, how terrible. And then like swerve the other way and go like, oh, we must only, I don't know. Like, I mean, again, that's scripture that says like, only think on things that are pure and holy and all the things, which is like good. But then
I used to, meditate on that scripture to help me meditate on whatever was pure and right. What is though? Like,
I know
that was so vague. I was like, but what is what is good and pure, like just the things that make me feel warm and fuzzy, or like justice and mercy. I don't know. Like, that one could be interpreted many ways.
Yeah, and then to actually Blue Letter Bible. It's a great. I mean, do you have that?
Yes, I do.
So lame. Look at us being kind of pastoral. But
I had it.
Yeah,
I still have the U version, which was the main one I use. But
which again is helpful and literally takes a lifetime to sort of go like, okay, what is good and what I don't know. Yeah, I mean, is anything good or bad? I mean, you keep saying
I don't know.
It just is. It's just gray. And
I feel like that's why we try to put things in such a so linear or binary or like static.
Yeah,
because it's easy to just contemplate when it's like something, but like human existence is not that. It's so, and even I feel like even justice is something that is very connected to relationship.
It is,
because
and context, circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have these court cases that get retried where people are innocent, and then they it's all so contextual.
Yeah,
and so based on what your view of justice is.
Yeah,
I can hear a story from you and be like, that's so unjust. This needs to be declared.
Totally,
but that's not the way it goes. And I mean, even with my story and my brother, suffering, it's just not as easy as being that was really bad.
Yeah.
Now I should, I don't know, hate my mom forever, or,
totally.
She's still a human.
Mm-hmm. She's still
who gave birth to me. Yeah.
Boundaries, I guess, are helpful, and to go, and that's maybe where that self, nobody can tell you how to feel about your mother.
Yeah.
No different than nobody can really tell me what I need to feel about certain things.
Exactly.
That was an interesting, just to talk about, for example, having an affair or doing something wrong, sinful. And then hearing on the outset of that, again, confess, repent, do the right thing, just pray more. Everything kind of will go back, or could go back to, not normal, because you're forever, there's no going back from that.
Yeah.
But I think there was a way to go forward from that. But the prescription that I got from inside the church, for one, I don't think we're very honest. I don't think anybody's really that honest about what has actually gone on in their own life that they could then relate to those things and go, oh yeah, I'm willing to talk about this really ugly truth that maybe nobody else knows about in my life. And this is how doing the right thing actually didn't do the right thing. And I couldn't pray about this. I can't even talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then two, okay, what is the right thing? 'Cause again, I think there's a ton of different reasons why people are unfaithful or sin.
Oh, for sure.
In my background, I'm well, is that generational? Because I mean, that was for sure my birth father, many families. So maybe that's one reason. Maybe, I mean, I would say there was imbalance in my marriage that was unhelpful.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people would say that stuff is a Christian way of being married, right? Is sort of giving up some of your, kind of giving up some of your autonomy to your partner, to then, I mean, the burden then is a lot heavier on the partner that, has more control.
Because that Christian view of that
male headship, right?
The male headship thing kind of requires
where
a wife to be
stays at home,
or just second place kind of.
And I would say we tried not to function like that. Then when somebody is outside the home or making more money than the other, or has potentially more power in the world than the other, those are just tricky things to navigate. And I've seen that sort of exist in other Christian marriages, and some function well like that. I think, 50 years ago, that was totally normal, and it seemed to function, which is really interesting to me.
But it's also crazy how
to function, right?
Yeah.
But now we see that maybe things aren't so good. Like a lot of divorces happening now based on kind of like the pink job, blue jobs. And I don't know. These are just things that are good to question and go,
for sure.
Does it actually, because I would say that was hard for me to exist in that world where I didn't feel like an equal, and I wouldn't put that all on my like husband. I would say that is like an inherent thing about me, where I've always struggled with work, right? Because of my history. And so I just naturally then, that did me no service.
Did not set you up
exactly.
well.
And that's like a huge reason why doing the right thing for me, I didn't feel like I could be a whole person in sort of existing in our marriage the way it was. Because I do need I feel like that's something that I didn't realize as a young person was important to me, to feel like, no, I'm equally as worthy, or I have as much worth as my partner, or we are just like in the world as it exists, like very much equals, right? Like I don't know how many times I got the like, it was just very clear, I think, to most people. And even now I get lots of comments where it's still like, no, that's either my exes or like, it's just the disparity. It was very, very apparent. Just to anybody out there who maybe is wrestling with that. I think, again, it's okay to go, hey, I'm not okay. And hey, maybe I want to do something to kind of like right the balance. Because I actually don't need to, like, just because either the church says this or your family says this, it's a good way forward. But if it doesn't feel right to you, you have the authority in your own life to go, no, I'm not okay, and this needs to stop. And that's where autonomy again is someone
comes in.
My life. Again, like, I don't know if you've seen the church shame other people. Like, because I know you have other friends that have stuff, or you have too, that they kind of, you're either not blessed or you're not. There's that spiritual,
you kind of lose the brownie point.
Because you're unable to withstand like this, like, or how things like need to, I don't know. It's weird. Autonomy is not something that is really championed in the church, I don't find.
Well, I feel like it is, but it's gate-kept until you're like at a certain, and then you're, unless it's like fine to have your own voice unless you're talking about this, or unless you're saying that, or unless you're like,
which is like, right. It's like reading the right books. Like censors, like, it's like, oh, wait, what?
Right. Like you feel it. You feel like, I just know I'm not really free to say that. It's like, it's an unsaid thing where it's like, or I'm not free to think that way.
Because why?
Or,
They're bad. People need to stay away. You lead them astray. Or whatever else.
Which can sometimes just be more of a, like, I don't know, maybe a threat to the group think, which helps the machine work.
Which is
to say it in very, like, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we don't, I think that is something to reiterate here, is to go, it's not the church, like the way I think both of us would see the church being like smaller groups of humans existing in community, talking about things very openly. Like in many ways, some of the conversations we have, like at art nights or whatever, like, kind of crying out to God in a sense, like, what the fuck? Like, this is so hard. Life is hard. Or this is my experience. Like, that is what I want to think is like the best parts of church. And like the worst parts of church is the system, like any system, right? Like those systems of the world, which we like to pretend, oh, that can't happen in this church building that claims the name of God. But from my experience, we like to kind of pervert that a little. Like, it's about tithing dollars, or keeping the lights on, like all great things. Like, of course the church is going, we need resources and to run. It is like, so the gospel is like shared, but then what's the byproduct of that? Then you can't, it's not as easy to question because we just don't have the time, or we don't. It's hard.
It is tricky.
Systems are tricky because systems, man. They seem to kind of like, they make then you have to become a part of the system.
Totally.
Have that individual.
Which, like, I get that we need system, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, I even think of Jesus, like, and people always wanting to, like, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? And just wanting to pin him on things. but then he would always kind of like respond with the question. And it was always kind of like questions that had to make you think about your inner world,
right?
Instead of
Very
like
individual.
Yeah. Like not like, yeah. And then even with, like we all, he was one of the people to point out, like, just because you haven't done this doesn't mean you don't think this way. Exactly. Or have these like lustful thoughts about a like,
totally.
And he was like being like, it's the same, like just because,
And we like the hierarchy, right? Of like either sin or people, right? And so,
but because thoughts are invisible, we don't know what they are unless you're honest.
Totally.
Then sin, like an actual acting on that thought, is much more overt and obvious to everyone, so you can jump on that. But I think, that's where Jesus is like, whatever's going on internally is actually just as important as.
And I would say like words, like we like to like gossip or like, causing division.
Yeah.
Those are really detrimental things to how people like feel about themselves or how they operate, or like manipulation or like that's not great. And yet, again, we like to say like this other one thing is such a big deal. And it is, and it can be. There's a lot of other subtleties that just get glazed over and like, oh, no big deal. I don't know.
So I think maybe where it's like interesting is because with church and like when God's involved, obviously as people who are like Christian or were in that context for a very long time, like you're sort of giving God in a way like the authority to tell you how to live your life, right? Like you want to live life that's like pleasing to him. But that means you give authority to his voice, but then his voice is being voiced in the voices of humans, and that's just where it can get really messy of like we sort of allow our access to God to be based in other people. And when you kind of are able to, I don't know, just realize that and that's a weird thing because we teach that all the time. Like God is with you and you can pray.
He's within you.
You can pray to him and seek intimacy with him and hear his voice for yourself. But
it is so said.
But I'll also tell you what you need to be doing.
If you get it wrong, I will make sure to like bring you back. Again, I found that a lot as I try and like, I'm curious about my own experience. People feel the need quite often to go either, oh, this happened because like we joked about our yoga thing or whatever. Like, oh, you let these things into your life, therefore this is the byproduct of that. Acted out in this way because of those things. Which maybe, but also like, I don't know, like I think that's where it's like hard to, like you really have to know what's like sorting out what are people's other projections. So it's just their projections and opinions and their worldview coming through to you, because you can be sort of like a scapegoat almost for and what is a God, like that's hard to define. And then especially if you're someone who's already vulnerable in a certain place, say where worth is involved, if you're already vulnerable and not really knowing that my voice matters and like my feelings matter, then that's where it can just be so taken advantage of. And sometimes I think retreating and like finding, again, just that space where your existence matters just as you are. And whether you participate in church or you are holy or good or whatever that is, like people often are like, oh no, she's not going to church, or oh no, she's not doing this, that, or the other thing.
Therefore, this means that.
She's lost. She's bad. Oh my goodness.
Backslider.
And then, maybe we need to be like afraid of her, careful of her, and listen. Like, And okay, by all means, like don't listen. Like I'm not trying to say she doesn't know the podcast or anything I have to say, but that shouldn't be used to then manipulate me into coming back into the fold. Like, okay, and then just leave me over here. Stop telling me that I'm bad or that I've lost everything. I've lost my salvation, or I'm whatever else that is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Again, which I haven't necessarily heard that, but definitely guaranteed there's the bad talk. But
well, because there was also like lots of did you ever hear of that verse in the New Testament? It's like, I don't know, something about like the unforgivable sin.
Oh yeah. I had somebody say that, which is like,
I remember thinking about that as a kid and being like, I hope that I never get like so fearful, you know?
Like that's just denial of God. Like unforgivable sin is like what somebody in like on the outset of all this, it's like, well, you know, this isn't an unforgivable sin. Like it's like you haven't denied God. But I got to a place where I'm like, God, you are not it. Like you can't exist if you're going to set humans up like
if this is what it's like.
Totally, right? Yeah. And I still like, I mean, even last week, there was some stuff that went on that, again, I just spiral into like, I'm bad and I always fuck up and I'm destined to like hurt my kids or to hurt other people around me. Like, just enough. And then, I don't know, just to like kind of take myself back from that and go like, no, just relax, and it's okay to question God, and it's okay to doubt, and it's okay to wrestle with these things. It's a really honest place to be. Because life is hard. Again, we've said this before, and
hard and complicated,
and you can feel set up sometimes. Like, the fact that God has created us, you know, with free will and in His image, and yet we have the propensity to do great harm to other people. It's like, that's alarming. You should wrestle with that and kind of go like, what kind of God is this? Right? And yet we're never gonna, I think that's kind of the best place to be, is we're never really gonna understand. I've loved in the past year, I've interacted with like a lot of atheists. And it's it's just been really helpful for me because, again, like I can see their inherent worth. And or it was sort of like, oh no, you don't really have anything in common with folk like that. You have to save them, or it's like my job and I feel all this responsibility.
Surround yourself with like-minded people.
Totally, right? And now I'm like, no, I actually am curious. No different than like I interacted with somebody who is like a naturalist or whatever. And before it's like, oh, you know, maybe some of that's like witchcraft. And now it's like, if I can be as curious about like their journey and go, okay, they have self-governance, like God is like fully responsible to do whatever He's doing in their life. And I can also appreciate that in my life. Then for one, no kidding, we're not God. Like we don't have the power to save people. Like that is, and we do that to ourselves. Like the church does that. It's our responsibility to bring people in the door. And all this, all that to say is that it's been great to just really observe folk that don't have any sort of idea or thoughts about God in their life, that they're doing just fine. And for me to be curious and even see like, okay, does that resonate with me? In the moments like I felt, thank goodness God exists for me in the moment, the darkest places. I'm like, no, I'm still talking to something. Like, I still do believe that there was some person that created me, and I do resonate a lot with what Jesus did here and that. So that's important. And I mean, the church context, I don't think we'll ever be able to escape. It's like so embedded in us.
It's just funny as you're talking, because I remember I used to say this. Like I used to say, I just don't know how people do it without Jesus. And like, I've met many now and I'm like, they just do.
Fine.
They just do.
Fine.
They're just people, and
they actually have a repulse. Like when it's like, oh, you know, I used to go to church, I used to work at the church. I'm like, well, I don't have anything to do with that. Like that's a really interesting thing also to observe, that there's hypocrisy or like totally the lack of like connection with Christians sometimes to the outer world or even to themselves. Like there's some disconnect there where they're like, I don't really want any part of that.
For sure.
Not because I think it's more like they're like, are you watching yourself? Like you claim to be something that you're not. And
it's so easy to see through. Like, and I feel like that used to be a way. And now I didn't, my intention wasn't that at the time, but I realized that kind of things that I would say were actually ways of kind of bolstering my own like superiority and my
like you had
like I'm doing it the right way, like I'm living right, and
or you're doing it to again like try to encourage
kind of like a false humility, or I don't know. But what was I going to say? I had a thought. Thoughts escape me all the time. Oh, like God forbid we should be inspired by anyone who's not a Christian. But the hypocrisy of that is so funny because like our everyday lives, I mean, like if we wanted to be fully removed from the world, as it were, like we would be living in the desert, not like participating in culture and in like, so you know what I'm saying? Like there's so many areas of our lives where we are looking to people and emulating people that don't have quote unquote Jesus.
Yeah.
But in this, we were like encouraged to kind of not build friendships because we might be like,
well, we were always supposed to be
a bit twisted,
right?
Yeah.
I think of the Israelites, like it's like, oh, and like why wars or God kind of like killed other people. Like that was always this idea, like there is the one people group that is like holy and set apart.
Yeah.
And then, but like, again, looking at,
which is what holy kind of means, the set apart. Yeah.
Hard thing. So, I mean, it makes sense why we feel like, oh no, like, we have to
be in the world, but not of it. Yeah.
But again, that is like, for one, God is the only like person, thing, or whatever that can be fully holy. And what does it look like to be like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's like,
it's a lot of pressure, to be honest.
It is.
To like have to be this sort of exemplary species of human
that again
we can never
and we've been set like, because that again, that's something that has really kind of gone on in my psyche since everything is like, you set me up. And again, like humanity has been set up. We are not God. We're human. So how do we embrace like that humanity and the fact that we are always kind of going to have like good and evil within us? Like that we can never be this thing that we want so desperately to be, which is like God and holy and all of that. So
perfect. And and then it's interesting because I mean like Jesus kind of hung out with people that were the outcasts of society. But like I think that's tricky too, because then it's like, well, what is that? What is the modern equivalent of that? And we don't like, I don't know.
Certainly not the us and them thing, right? Again, I don't know why and like when we're talking about like the good and the bad and like autonomy and stuff, like, right. So we're kind of like told as groupthink, like this is the way it should be. And like, even if that goes against like what you feel like God is imparting on your heart and what's right in your conscience. If it does not go in line with what the Bible says or what the church said,
that group interpretation,
have the right to say this is my truth, right? Whereas what I think you're getting at, what we see with the Jesus is like he just was with people and allowed that space where people could just exist. And yes, it's tricky because in some cases he's like, go and sin no more, or he would kind of identify the thing that they were struggling with in life. But like,
even that story, there's a lot behind that story. The woman who, I mean, there's some scholars that would say that was like in addition later on to manipulate the view of women. And also Mary Magdalene, like she's been sort of, her reputation has been trashed with like, that she was, what was she, like a adulterous woman,
right,
or whatever. And
was she indeed?
Like just there's so much to like these little stories as well that we base so much on that just warrants like deeper study as well, because that can affect how you interpret.
And again, if you cast yourself as the hero or the villain, because again, we like to make all of these Bible characters into these amazing heroes, and none of them were. And their character is so much more like, I mean, me, I'm like the adulterer, right? So but like, is that forever my definition? And if I continue to choose to like act like that, like then am I less than?
Yeah.
I have no place.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus would not say that. He would have hung out with me, right?
Yeah.
So that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think we like to say that, of course, you have a place in the church, but it doesn't play out like that.
It doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's lots of unsaid stuff that's hard to,
which is tricky, which I think is kind of like, again, the point of these conversations is like, really, like, what is here? Because, we say, like, on paper, it's supposed to look like this way, right?
Yeah.
We have freedom and free will and, our relationship with God, like, if he shares something with us and we can, like, go down that path with him, but then there is only universal truth and no, we have to correct that and the us and them thing and their person's dangerous. So, like, okay, like, it's not functioning the way that we say that it should.
Yeah. And that's the hard tension.
Yeah.
Even with like people who are supposedly non-believers, and then you maybe get a glimpse into their life and like their life is sort of more attractive than like that's been the
more at peace.
Yeah, that's been like how do you deal with that?
Sure.
When like they're, like, and they supposedly don't have Jesus, but like, I don't know, it's just so interesting.
How do you deal with that? Again, I love it. I love the curiosity. We go, okay, why is it like that? What are they experiencing? Oh, they're experiencing freedom.
Yeah.
They're experiencing the fact that they can self-govern and also are accountable to themselves for their actions.
Totally.
Like this person that's going to police them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which also leads me to a thought that I was thinking before was with you saying like the whole like you set me up God kind of thing and feeling like we're just destined to like we have so much power in a sense. Yeah, not God. Yeah. But we do have so much power to really like mess things up. And in a sense, we see that repeated over and over in history and with like wars and and we're all constantly trapped in this, not trapped, but involved in this like moral dilemma. But I will say, I feel like it is the people who are actually aware of this and thinking and understand the weight of like, wow, I have the power to like really harm people or otherwise. And I feel like it's only the people who are actually thinking about that weight and that power that then have potential to understand it and then make the choice. Like we've always quoted that scripture in the Bible too, like, choose the tongue, is it? The tongue has in it, the tongue, the power of life and death. And also like choose you this day. That was also quoted to us. So it's like choose to whom you will serve. Like, and there's truth to that because like we all have that choice.
Totally.
But it's not as easy always to make the right choice or what even is the right choice. And like,
of course you want to make the good choice.
Yeah.
Of course you want to be the hero. But again, the tension is you're often both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you legitimately don't know what the right choice is.
Exactly.
And that's why mistakes happen. And I think it's just this more like tuning in to awareness and knowing yourself that ultimately is the thing that is going to help you to make good choices or make better choices that are more informed. But also like I know that for my kids, I'm not going to try and intercept them from every like mistake they make because some kids, as I'm learning, only learn from like the rough consequence where it's like that the lesson is not going to resonate. And I feel like that's the thing we don't give ourselves is like this is living. Living is like trial and error, experimenting, just trying as we stumble forward to like get a bit better at like making decisions.
Yeah, like we came across that Zoe Saldana where she talks about like one of her greatest the thing she loves the most about herself is that she knows herself. And she loves herself. She loves the mistakes she's made. She loves the way she learns.
I love someone that can say that.
Totally.
Like, I love the mistakes I've made.
Yeah, because often, like, and we talked a bit about guilt this week, right? And what the difference, Brene Brown says, like, guilt is I did something bad, and shame is I am bad for this thing, right?
Yeah.
And again, like
guilt inspires change.
Yes. And sometimes that change is actually like distance or boundaries,
for sure.
Whatever. And sometimes I don't know. I just think that in order to like fully look at it, you have to be really honest about it. And
for sure,
the act of confession, though we talk a lot about that in church. I mean, Catholic church, you're supposed to go do that like, I don't know, it's once a week or so, but only to like the one person.
Yeah.
Whereas, okay, like we're supposed to share each other's burdens. And what I've found, marvel, like it's been so embarrassing. Like since like the past year, some of the things that I've chosen to do that are like clearly like, I don't want to say bad, but they wouldn't have been choices that I would have made in the past. And I've gone like, I think I'm going forward and doing this thing that I don't know how I feel about it. But it wasn't through trying it and going, oh, maybe that was a mistake. But the things that I learned because I was willing to risk either the shame or the embarrassment, but it was just the place that I was at. It was the next step forward in what needed to happen.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people would have gone like, don't do that, bad idea.
Yeah.
But it actually has been so helpful because again, I felt what I needed to feel in that moment in order for change to happen.
Yes.
And I think that God, like, again, like depending on, like for me specifically, not having a father, feeling unworthy or feeling like I'm a failure, that is only going to rewrite those things in my life, I believe for me specifically, through experiences that reinform that.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think I have to be willing to make mistakes going forward.
Yeah.
I think I've been so afraid. I've been so caught up in like, you have to be good so that no one has a reason to abandon you. You have to be good so that like whatever other reason, because you owe God your goodness.
Yeah.
Like, and now to just...
And you have to know the answers. I feel like that's such a hard one.
Totally.
Because like we don't.
Like that for
just admitting that you don't know.
Totally.
That, it's like there's such release in that. Like, and I don't expect myself to have all the answers.
Because you're...
I'm living. Yes. I'm like experiencing and learning as I go. And I don't know.
It's way too much pressure.
It's so much pressure. Yeah. And I think it's a lot.
I mean, I crumbled under the pressure of like having to keep it all together and I can only imagine for other people that maybe feel the same way and are like, any day now I'm going to totally lose it.
Yeah.
Like, because it's a lot.
Well, I mean, like, that's what it's interesting you're talking about humiliation. And for anyone listening to this, I feel like Scott the painter, those slides on humiliation would be like, you can go reference that yourself. But he had a lot of amazing things to say about humiliation. But like humiliation could be like, for sure. And like maybe in your case, you'd say it was like having this affair and messing up to the point where you're like
so public.
Yeah. And then like physically, like that's kind of how I feel like it was with a miscarriage, where you're just like, physically in a place you have no control over.
Totally.
And then you're just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And you realize you have no control.
Yeah.
And then, but I feel like from that is where the greatest things grow from. Because like, I mean, Jesus as well, his life ended in humiliation, like
utter.
And like we don't like to think about that.
A liar.
Yeah. He was naked. He was like, and people up for public display.
Yeah. Abused him and said the worst things about him. Like the religious people cast him like to the dogs.
Yeah.
And like that, I remember in like some of those deepest, darkest moments going like, okay, like I did lie and then now it's not anymore and like I'm still considered a liar, but so was Jesus, right? Like there is that beautiful kind of, if there's some way to like continue forward with Jesus, I'm like, no, he did suffer like we did. He does understand our pain and that's kind of a really cool, beautiful.
Yeah. It's comforting to know. Yeah.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up, I think I would really like to say, like, for anybody who feels like they owe other people something or they feel like they're not free to say how their internal world like really is, or like they feel like there's some level of control in their life, whether it's through like church or parents or spouse or something like that. Like it's okay. Maybe not with the people that are like in control, but to sort of start like mining that out. And it does, like, if you're not ready, that's okay too. Like it does take it's a lot to kind of like get out from under some of those things.
Yeah.
And again, by saying that this thing is bad doesn't need to villainize the thing that is trying to control you, because oftentimes that's not the case. Right? It's like faulty systems and just things like people are unaware of.
Yeah.
And so again, hero villain thing is not what this is about. It's going like, again, from last week, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I need to feel like I can voice that I'm not okay, which is the autonomy part today, to go like, you don't need to tell me that I'm good or bad. I just need to say like, this is what I need to do going forward. And it's not helpful to have people who haven't walked the same path that you are kind of say that something is good or bad. Again, I don't know if that's helpful for anybody, but it does matter, I think. Just it should matter to yourself. And I do believe that it matters to God that we pursue I don't think wholeness is necessarily always like something that we can achieve, but at least some understanding of like finding peace, or some like that, what do we call that? That foundation of like, no, I'm okay. And I have the right to kind of pursue something that makes me feel just baseline okay.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, like, a lot of times I feel like this does start with like just being able to know what you think or feel yourself. And I think a lot of the time, if in a lot of church contexts too, where we are sort of conditioned to like be listening for the direction, or we put people in these places of having authority, and it can be hard to switch from like always looking to someone else to actually be like, oh no, what do I think? What do I really think about this? How does this making me feel? And especially if you've been someone as well that whose voice has always been squashed down, and you just feel like so scared to even voice your own opinion, or like starting with just, what do I even think or feel about this, can be like a good place to begin to like becoming more confident in yourself and who you are. And I think, because I feel like you can't raise your voice, and you can't say no, and you can't like put a boundary in place unless you are confident in your own voice. And so I feel like,
and there's a bunch of different,
just tuning into yourself
doesn't happen, distrust of ourselves. And and you're so right to go, no, you can, like, you are worthy enough, you exist, like if you're breathing right here and now, you have the right to be curious about what you think, and say yes or no, or I need space, or I don't, or whatever. And anybody kind of say to you, you're good or bad for those things, is really tricky, because then there's that denial of what is actually true, which is just how you feel. Don't like, it's like those, what do you call that? Like the spontaneous kind of like, oh, I got to do this thing. No. Like, again, this is like a curiosity and a kind of like a long-suffering thing.
It can grow in awareness. And I think that's a journey of
everybody deserves to have like their own voice.
And I know for me, journaling was really helpful in sort of just like seeing my thoughts on paper, even if it's like sometimes even the step of saying them aloud can be really scary. But writing them down, even just to see your thoughts reflected back at you, like, oh yeah, that's what's been going on in my mind. Like that can be really helpful.
As good as it is, because sometimes we don't want to see the ugly, because we only, like you've said that a few times, we only want to see ourselves in one like heroic light. And it's like, no, it's okay to talk about like the broken and the kind of like not so attractive aspects of ourselves. Kind of, again, because that comes from some place that just is trying to find balance, or again, wholeness, or whatever that is. And it's okay. Like, most people are not telling you their internal kind of like ugliness, and somebody has to go first. And I don't know. And even just to yourself, just in a journal. Or
totally. Yeah. I've got a friend who likes to do just voice notes. She'll just talk into her and then listen back. And that can actually also surprisingly be a really good way to actually physically hear your own voice.
Totally.
And help to give it the weight that like it does deserve.
Yeah. Especially if you don't have people to listen, like some of us are lonely or people, whatever, right? And it's like, or can't afford a therapist or not.
Yeah. Like that's a big thing.
Yeah. Like you can voice these things and
there's ways.
Yeah. So you matter. You're important.
Very much.
Yeah, so much. And thanks again for being here, you guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Till next week.
Bye.